New York City. For 400 years, it's been this global magnet for everything. Goods, money, ideas. But the one thing that truly defines New York is its ability to constantly, relentlessly reinvent itself. And according to a brand new report from McKinsey, it's that time again. Time to reinvent.
I mean, just look back at the city's history. It's this incredible series of transformations. It started out dominating shipping and the fur trade. Then, boom, it becomes a manufacturing and garment industry giant. And then, of course, it transforms into the undisputed financial capital of the world. Change is literally in its DNA. Which, when you look at this timeline, kind of begs the question, what's next?
All right, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to look at why a new chapter is even on the table. Then we'll dive into what are being called the global arenas of competition. These are the industries of the future. We'll see where New York has a winning hand, and finally how all this could totally reimagine what it's even like to live in this city. So, first up, New York's next chapter. And the core idea here is a pretty bold one, that the very industries that make the city a powerhouse today might not be what carries it into the future. And don't get me wrong, the New York metro area's economy is an absolute giant right now. You've got finance, healthcare, professional services. These are the gears that keep everything moving, employing millions of people. But here's the thing. If history has taught us anything, it's that what worked for one era is rarely what works for the next. And that brings us to this really fascinating idea at the center of the report, what McKinsey is calling arenas of competition. You can think of this as a map to where the next big wave of global economic growth is actually going to come from. So, what exactly is an arena? Well, it's basically a high-stakes, high-growth industry. We're talking about fields that are being supercharged by game-changing tech, a flood of investment money, and just massive global demand. These are the industries that are going to define our future. And this isn't some abstract, far-off stuff. We're talking about very real, world-changing industries. Things you hear about every day, like AI and electric vehicles, but also cloud computing, cybersecurity, and even modular construction and the commercial space industry. McKinsey's identified 18 of these arenas in total. And the sheer scale of the opportunity here is, well, it's just mind-boggling. We're talking about a potential $48 trillion in global revenue by 2040 from just these 18 arenas. To put that in perspective, that could be a third of all global GDP growth in the next decade and a half. The prize is just staggering. Okay, so with this massive economic shift on the horizon, the billion-dollar, or I guess trillion-dollar question is, where does New York fit in all this? What's its edge? Which of these arenas can it really truly dominate? And that brings us to the first of three big categories the report lays out, New York's winning hand. These are the arenas where the city isn't just a player, it's already set up to be a leader. So the report zeroes in on 5 key areas where New York already has a massive head start. You can kind of see a theme, right? Huge dominance in the digital world, e-commerce, ads, streaming, but also in really critical fields like cybersecurity and even breakthrough pharma, especially that booming market for obesity drugs. I mean, just look at this chart for digital advertising. It says it all. Over the past 5 years, New York didn't just compete for investment, it captured more than half of all the venture capital funding in ad tech. That's more than the other top 19 US cities combined. It's not just a player, it's the undisputed center of gravity. But it's not all a walk in the park. Take cybersecurity. New York has this massive opportunity. It's a global financial hub, so it pulls in a ton of investment. But there's a huge catch, a serious talent shortage, with something like 20,000 cybersecurity jobs sitting open right now. That's a hurdle that absolutely has to be cleared. All right, next up are the accelerators. Think of these as the foundational technologies like AI and the cloud that don't just grow on their own. They act like rocket fuel for pretty much every other industry in the city. Let's start with cloud services. You might think the cloud is already everywhere, right? But this chart shows something pretty surprising. Even with all the hype, only about 20% of IT workloads have actually moved to the cloud. That means a whopping 80% of the market is still up for grabs. That's a potential $3 trillion prize. And then there's the ultimate accelerator, AI. The real story here isn't just about building AI companies. It's about how AI is going to supercharge the very industries that already define New York. Just imagine boosting annual revenue in banking, the city's bedrock, by nearly 5%, or pharmaceuticals by 4.5%. That is some serious growth. Now, this final category, this might be the most exciting one because it's all about how these new industries will fundamentally change daily life, how New Yorkers are going to live, work, and just move around their city. This is where the future gets really tangible. We're talking about a city with electric and autonomous vehicles completely reshaping our streets, where delivery drones and other new forms of air mobility change how we get things. And, maybe most importantly, where a totally new way of building could finally start to fix one of the city's biggest headaches: housing. And that new way is called modular construction. So instead of building everything from scratch on site, you actually manufacture huge sections in a factory, ship them to the site, and then assemble them like giant building blocks. This process can slash construction time by up to half, which offers a real credible path to tackling the city's housing affordability crisis. So, what's the path to making this 2040 vision a reality? The report is really clear on this point. This isn't a prediction, it's a call to action. This future is not just going to happen on its own, it has to be deliberately built piece by piece. I just love this quote from the report. The New York of 2040 isn't just a dream, it's a destination. It frames the future not as some vague hope, but as a real place you can get to, if you have the right map. And this is that map. Success is going to take smart, strategic investment, visionary leadership from everyone, bold partnerships, and a huge focus on developing the workforce to close those talent gaps we talked about. And, critically, it all has to be done with a real commitment to equity to make sure everyone shares in the success. And this is really the bottom line. The opportunity is there, the potential is crystal clear, but absolutely none of it is guaranteed. A competitive advantage has to be earned, and it's earned through sustained action and real commitment. Which leaves us right back where we started, with that ultimate question. For a city that has reinvented itself over and over again for 4 centuries, what will its next chapter look like? All the pieces are on the board, but the game is still very much left to be played.